In the previous lecture, we learned how to allow the user to set variables using the input or the raw input function. Now this is very useful and works perfectly as shown in that lecture. The only problem with this is that the way we used the variable in here is not very secure. Now this might not be a problem when it comes to simple scripts like this, but I just want to give you this note so that you keep it in mind whenever you're writing your own programs. It's not very secure because we're allowing the user to input anything they want in here. And then we're not checking what this input is. So we're supposed to only allow the person to enter a name for the interface and a value for a new MAC. But the user can misuse this program and enter Linux commands. Then these commands are going to be substituted in here in the subprocess.call module, and they'll actually be executed on the system. Now again, like I said, in the scenario of this program that we're writing right now, this might not be very big of an issue, but you can argue the fact that this program is not very secure or is not very well implemented because it allows the user to use it to do other things than its purpose. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We all know if we do ls, it'll list all the files in the current directory, and as you can see I have my MacChanger and VM directory. Now let's run our Python script, and then when it asks me for interface, I'm gonna put LAN 0, but I'm also gonna put a semicolon and put another command. Now the semicolon in Linux is used to tell the terminal that I want to execute another command after the current command. So that's why I'm putting it here, and then I'm gonna put ls, which is my second command. So what's gonna happen now is the interface variable is gonna have a value of LAN 0 semicolon ls. That's going to be substituted in here. So this command is going to become ifconfig LAN 0, end of command because we have the semicolon, and then the next command is going to be ls. So I'm also going to put another semicolon after it to make sure that whatever that comes after this command is going to be treated as another command. And now when I hit enter, you'll see that we'll manage to hijack MacChanger.py, which is our program, and get it to execute other commands on the system that the program is not supposed to execute. So we're just going to put anything for Mac. So as you can see, the first command was ifconfig LAN 0, and this is its result. And then it executed ls, which is my second command. And this is its result. As you can see, it's listing the files in the current working directory. Now this output is repeated 3 times because the interface is used 3 times in here in these 3 lines. So basically what's happening is a user can hijack our program and get it to execute other commands that the program is not supposed to execute, and the user is not supposed to be allowed to do these things through our program. And again, this might not be vital in this simple script that we're writing right now, but you want to keep this in mind whenever you're writing your own programs. Now there is a very simple fix to this issue, and it can be implemented using the second way of calling subprocess. So remember the first time I showed you the subprocess module and I said that there is 2 ways of using the call function. We can use it using this way, which is the one that we've been using in all of the previous lectures, or you can use it using this way, which is a little bit confusing. Hence I went with the second way to start up with you. Now if you think of it, this way is actually kind of simple once you just analyze it. So you're still calling subprocess.call, and the only difference is instead of giving the command as a string like this, you're splitting the command in a number of elements inside a list. So each element or each string in here is actually one word. So every time you see a space in the command, you're supposed to close the quote, separate it with a comma, and put the rest of the command. The next time you hit a space, you close the quote, put a comma, and on to the next word. When you do this, Python will know that the first element in here is the command, and everything that comes after it is arguments or is part of that command. So even if we try to hijack it the same way that we just did, Python will know that this should be part of the first command and should never be executed as a second command. Let me put this in practice and it will become clearer to you. So I'm actually going to retype the commands here below. So we're doing subprocess.call. And then instead of giving a script, we're going to give a list. So we're going to open a square bracket and close it. And again, each element in here is going to be a string. And every time we see a space, we're going to close the element. So the command that we always use is usually ifconfig. Then we're not going to put a space. We're going to go outside the string, put a comma, space, and then type the next part, which is our interface, as you can see here. Now, because the interface is a variable, we don't need to enclose it in 2 quotation marks. So we're just going to type that the way it is. Then the next argument of the ifconfig command is down. And again, we're enclosing this with 2 quotation marks because down is a string, it's part of the command. So if you compare this with that, it's actually very similar. The only difference is instead of adding everything in a string, we have a list in which each element is a word in that command. So every time we see a space, we put it as a separate element. Now, this is actually the first time you see a list, and it's a very good example. As you can see, a list is just a number of elements that we enclose within 2 square brackets, this bracket and this bracket. Now we're gonna have to do the same with the next 2 commands. So to duplicate the current line, I'm just gonna do Control-D twice. As you can see, it's doing it for me automatically. And now I just need to do the second command. So the second command is already ifconfig interface. Now this shouldn't be down, this should be set to HW. Put a comma. And the next word is other. Put a comma. And finally, we put the new Mac. Again, we don't need to enclose this in quotation marks because it's a variable. And finally, the last command is going to be ifconfig interface up instead of down. And that's it. So these 3 commands are a much more secure version of these 3 commands. It's more secure because now Python knows that the interface and down are all part of the same command, which is ifconfig. So even if I try to hijack the interface variable and put a command in here, Python will know that this should not be treated as a command, and it'll try to execute it within the ifconfig command here. This will return an error, but it won't allow an attacker to hijack the flow of our program. Now, let's delete all of this, save, and test our program. So I'm going to clear all of this. And we have our program here. It's asking me for the interface. And I'm going to do len 0 and follow it by ls. Like we did before. I'm going to hit enter, put anything for Mac. And as you can see, it's complaining about the existence of the quote and the ls. And then it's complaining about the interface name, but it's not executing the ls on the system. So a person cannot use this program to do anything other that we want them to do. Now, let's test the program and make sure that it actually works. So we'll set the interface to len 0 and put a new Mac. And I'm just going to do 3333 this time. We got the right message. Let's do ifconfig len 0. And as you can see, the MAC address is changed properly to 1122333333, and the program is working as expected.